Good day, everybody, and welcome to the 21st Century Business Podcast. So, today I'm quite excited. I've got a good friend with me. We've got a lot to share. It's going to be a cracker of a show. He's actually the first guest on our 21st Century Podcast, right? So, and he and I believes in the Bible. So, the Bible does say, first apostles. So that makes him, an apostle. So yeah, man, we're excited to have Mr. Cheka here.
Sure.
For those of you who maybe might need a bit of context, you've been hearing me talk about the 21st century business model, and it's always been in the context of network marketing. But I want us to expand that definition because it goes beyond network marketing. We talk about network marketing simply because it's one of the business models in the 21st century that have got unlimited upside and quite easy to get into. And we talk about a business here that does over $250 billion in sales every single year. So, but when we talk about the 21st century business model, we're talking about all the businesses that people can do from the comfort of their own home, or doesn't matter where they are, where they live. Businesses that have got little to no upfront cost for you to get involved, and also businesses that are hugely scalable. Things have been changing, but we're going to talk about that just now. But things have been changing right now. Parents are wanting to be more involved in their kids. As a result, others are choosing to work from home. Others are choosing to get into the gig economy, where they work in their own terms. Instead of working for a boss, but they actually outsource their skills, their expertise. But we're going to talk about that just now. So, but I want us to turn our attention to our special guest, Mr. Cheka.
Woo! Yeah, man.
So,
it's good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Mr. Cheka.
Yes, sir.
We're so excited to have you here. But
It's good to
for those of our audience who don't know who Mr. Cheka is,
Yes.
tell us, who is Neo Cheka?
This is probably one of the most, how can I put it, deep questions one can ask. Because as I'm telling you who I am, I'm also telling, it's within the same light I'm trying to figure myself out as well.
100%.
As human beings, we always try to bask on what we have done, and that as a consequence determines who we are. But not really, because we're always in the process. Because who I am today is not who I'm going to be 3 years from now when a person is also watching this particular podcast.
100%.
But today, Neo Cheka is just a simple. I'll say simple in the context of I also come from a family of hard workers, black people who never had it easy in life. My mother worked extremely hard. My father worked extremely hard as well. But he went on to pass. He passed on in 2003, and I was sort of almost forced to become the man of the house at the age of 10. And I say that to say, my mom is a very emotional creature, and an emotional creature, she used to put a lot of responsibilities, on me. One, not just as a child, but also as to have this particular emotional support. So I used to see my mom cry.
Sure.
I used to see my mom cry, and so I remember this was back in 2004-05. My mom crying, and this time it was because, in fact, this is the first time I actually saw my mom cry. By the way, the first time I heard her cry, but this was the first time I actually saw her cry. And this was when the house that she had bought was about to be repossessed. Now, this was just about a year after my father had passed away. So, I can put it, they call people like me old souls. People young, but they had so much, because, and it is not because I'm special or anything else, but it's simply because I had to, be a child, be a man, had all those responses. I was one of those people when I had to, my mom was reminding me of this. She says, "Now, do you remember every time when you'd ask me even for a pair of shoes, you'd say, 'Mom, if you can you please buy me this?' Mom, I don't know if you can." It would take me a while to go to my mom to ask her for something, whether it's a new pair of new pair of shoes, clothing, whatever the case may be, like basic things that a child would cry over. I never cried over things. Sure. Never in my life. I don't recall. My mom doesn't even recall me, crying to get something as a baby. I would always become, do you have this? Do you have that? So that sort of formed the kind of mindset that I've had, and as a consequence, it's gave birth to me being an entrepreneur.
Sure.
How is it that I don't ask people for things? How do I, how can we, even if I'm asking you for something, it's always a deal. Okay, if you do this for me, that's what I'm going to do. Right? So it's because I don't expect people to have things to give freely to me. You know
Sure.
what I mean? So then now becomes the entrepreneur. You know.
Sure.
That's now a part of me, but also I'm deeply passionate to see people transform in life. I was, and I mean transform, go from not having to having.
Sure.
I'm a sucker for success. You know,
Sure.
to see success stories.
Sure.
You know,
I can relate to that. Yeah.
You know, in fact, I'm one of those people. If I see something that I admire so much, and there's like negative publicity as to how this person attained that, I become so disappointed at the fact that, you know, like, for me, the fact that this guy was great was inspiring, not just me, but showing me the possibilities. So
Sure.
if you say, this person lied, yeah, you know what I mean? I try not to believe the negative stories attached to people's success.
Sure.
You know, even with this, you know, selling your soul to the devil and stuff like that, a part of me doesn't want to believe that, even though I know those cases do happen. But I don't want to believe that because I don't want there to be, you know, I don't want the notion to be out there to say that for you to become successful, these are the kind of things, you know, you have to do. So, yes, I'm a sucker for success, man. I live in my own world. I mean, I'm a dreamer, you know.
Sure.
I'm a dreamer, you know. And I'm one person who don't believe that things are impossible. In fact, I like to surround me. That is why, you know, I gravitated so much towards you, you know, because you're always living in the future. I remember when you told me years ago that, you know, you live in the future, you visit the present. I related so much to that. I gravitated so much to that, you know, because I don't really judge people based on what they have today, but I really want to judge people based on what do they see in the future.
Sure.
We can meet someone today with a Ferrari, and that's all they have.
Yeah.
They don't have anything, they don't see anything beyond that. You know, so for me, I'm really about the time to fill the gap between where I am today and what I see tomorrow.
Yeah.
And then most importantly, with regard, I mean, I've just spoken about myself, but with regards to other people, I'm very much passionate about, you know, interrupting people.
Sure.
I want to interrupt the viewer out there when they see me. You know, they must be interrupted. If I meet you, whether you have more than me, I want you to be interrupted by me. When you leave the space, you must, when you think of me, you must think about someone who has interrupted you into positivity, into a higher level of thinking, into a better, you know, expectation from life.
Sure.
You know, so because one of the laws, you know, in one of Newton's law is the first. In fact, Newton's first law: any object in motion remains in motion unless an external force comes to interrupt. In other words, you know, this mic, this, you know, laptop, whatever the case may be, it will always be stationary unless something comes to interrupt it, to move it. And so I'm very much passionate about seeing people grow, move towards potential. And so, yeah, man, that's a long answer to a very short question.
That's a loaded one. I mean, we can spend the whole day just unpacking some of the concepts that you just spoke about. And I think, you know, what you said about the fact that you don't look at the person where they are, but you look at where they could be. That's really a superpower in this day and age, you know, because we live in a day of instant gratification. You know, people relate to you based on what you have. As a result, people would rather fake having stuff, even if they don't have it, because that's the only way the world gets to accept them, right?
100%.
So that's a superpower right there. You know, it's something that is really, really rare in this day and age we're living in. But you know, take us back then to, you know, how did your entrepreneurship journey, you know, I mean, you know, you went through the normal rigmarole, you know, go to school, get good grades, go to varsity, you know, get a good job. I mean, you had all of that, but then you chose entrepreneurship. You know, take us through, you know, the thinking process and the decision making, you know, through that process as to, you know, what were you told, what did you actually realize or see in the workplace that made you actually want to go out there and being an entrepreneur on a full-time basis?
That's an interesting question, because we'll obviously take it back, because I mean, I think you and I had this conversation quite a lot of times, where you really try to pinpoint, and I was asked this question on another show that I attended last year, just before we went to Panama, and they asked, and I was really asking myself, are we born entrepreneurs? Is this something that chooses us, or do we choose it?
Yeah, interesting question.
like really, do we choose this road,
or
does this road choose us?
Yeah.
Because we can be born in the same situation, we can have the same human experience, but still come out very different.
Sure.
And I don't want to lie to you. I mean, we hear a lot of people come up with sort of answers to this, with regards to it being a definite. Anyone can become an entrepreneur, or you know what I mean? Because think about this, and you would know this as well, because we did not go to entrepreneurship because it was for survival purposes. It's not that we did not have in the beginning.
Sure.
You were a professional. I was a professional. I was an engineer. You were, in the construction. You were quantity survey, and you ask yourself, why did we trade that particular life of comfort and security for a life of uncertainty? The stupidity that we had to sort of be inclined towards, to leave. I mean, we as human beings, there's one thing about us: we want predictability.
Sure.
That is how our brain operates. Our brain, it looks at the past and tries to predict the future. And how it actually does this is, it takes the data from what we are used to and it forms a pattern. And that particular pattern, it then becomes a framework for what we're going to do to choose the future.
Yeah.
Right? And how it actually relates that to us is what we call comfort. Right? So if you do the same thing today, tomorrow, it then it forms a layer of comfort, and as a consequence becomes the basis by which we make decisions tomorrow. And so that is how our brain survives. That is how and so for an entrepreneur is a person who looks at today and perceives tomorrow, but not through the lens of what it is today. It looks at uncertainty. And so that's a level of stupidity. Why would you choose to go through not knowing how the next meal is going to come through, not having the certainty of next week's income with today's present responsibilities? Sure. And so that's the kind of stupidity that we have. And so that is why when you ask me this question, how did this thing come from? To be honest with you, I don't know. But what I do know is, I said I watched my mom work herself to a pulp. My dad, I mean, he died when I was young. Never saw him work, but I heard a lot of stuff that he had done. He was not an entrepreneur. He worked in non-profit organization. He went out there, did a lot of entrepreneurial work, but not being an entrepreneur. Go out, raise funds for the NGO, traveled parts of the world, Sweden, all of that. He was very extroverted, very much like myself. He was into art as well. He was very artistic. And he had this huge desire to see people's lives change. So there's a place in Cape Town called Baxter Theatre. He was the first black person to actually do a stage act at Baxter Theatre. So he used to take street kids, people involved in crime, teach them, get into the craft of acting, and display them on Baxter Theatre.
Wow.
So, but I mean, it's not like a form of him doing that for money. It was just him doing it for, what I mean. So apparently, my mom was telling me this.
Psychic income,
100%. Yeah. My mom told me that my father was a communist. So he never believed in capitalism as I do. You know? So I would not say I got entrepreneurship from him. My mom, however, comes from a background where my grandmother was selling on the streets. Her mother, which is my mother's great grandmother, was a sangoma. So people used to go to her, but they would leave with much. So she had entrepreneurship in a way as well. You know what I mean? So I don't know really where I got the entrepreneurship spirit. My mother then went in. She grew, went through the corporate ladder. She was on top. Even up until now, she was on top. But she never had the kind of money freedom that she wanted, the time freedom that she wanted. And so for me, I knew for a fact that this is not the kind of route that I want to go to. But I went to ask her, Mom, what do I need to do to become successful? She said, you need to go to school, get good grades, get a good job, and you'll have good money.
Sure.
Even though she went through that route, but she's like, no, you know what? You know what you should do? Instead of, I went into the kind of field I chose, even though I went higher the corporate ladder, the field that I was in was not paying enough. So you need to choose a different field. So, okay, cool. So what field do you think? Either you'd be a doctor, you'd be a lawyer, you'd be an engineer. So, okay, cool. I thought I was going to be a doctor. Then as I entered high school, I was like, okay, I'm going to be an engineer. Simple. I hated seeing people's blood. I mean, okay, so, and lawyers have to study a lot. So don't like reading a lot of big books, and so they said, engineer, you just need to calculate. I'm very good in mathematics. I like numbers, love numbers. So I'll choose being an engineer. And I went in. Immediately after that, when I was in primary school, because of this whole fact, again, my mom was always, it was not easy for me asking. I don't know where that came from. So at the age of 9, I had started studying at the age of 9 at Sunday school.
Wow.
I had a person who looked after me, a nanny. But then I would ask the nanny to, to make me some fat cakes, put some mince, and I'll go sell it on Sunday. Then I'll pay her.
Oh, wow.
Right? I will pay her. So from the money that I made, okay, this is yours.
Dude, at 9 years old, you were an entrepreneur.
At 9 years old,
Interesting.
And my mom encouraged it. My mom really encouraged it. I like the fact that I was gonna have money. Never mind, I would not buy anything with the money. I'd just have the money. Like, hey, you know what I mean? So, and my mom will end up using it. But I like that whole thing of I made money. Age 13, I had my first sales job where there was a guy opposite the street, very rich guy. So this guy had a company where he would deliver cases of Cooltip. That was about 12 cases. So people who had ordered last week, I would deliver and they would pay the following week. So there were times where now you would. So I did not really like carrying I'm not a hard labor guy. So I used to target those houses where they had not ordered, and I would go and I would pitch, and they would order, and then so I was the pitching guy,
Sure.
And I'd pitch in Afrikaans.
Interesting.
Yeah, because there's Afrikaans communities, colored and white neighborhood. Go pitch in Afrikaans. 13-year-old knocking on your door. Hi ma, well money, cool drink, any, na. You know what I mean? So it used to be I used to enjoy that, get 60 rand. And it wasn't commission based. I would have the standard $60 I would make on that weekend, at the age of 13. Then through high school, then got to varsity. Now at that particular moment in time, I was a footballer as well. Very, very good footballer. So I was either going to go to school or play football. And so I got a contract for a semi-professional team. I was in high school. And it was based in Port Elizabeth. So that's how I went to Port Elizabeth. I actually never went to Port Elizabeth to go to study. I actually went there because there was a team that I was semi-contracted to. But now the deal was with my parents, if I do well in my first semester at school and I show them that I can do well, then they will be allowing me to go and pursue my footballing career. And so what I did is I had gone, so I sort of parked this contract. I was going to come 6 months later after my first semester. Then I started, but my first month, there was this big competition at school, and, football was involved as well. I'm like, let me just go. And when I went there, the school saw me and they wanted me to play for the first team, which is going to be equivalent to actually playing with these guys. For my first 6 months, I failed my school because my parents didn't know I was playing soccer at school.
Sure. So
they just thought, he's failing because, it's hard or whatever. And I knew. But now I also knew that my mom was paying for it. Again, that whole empathetic sort of thing that I had towards my mom, was like, hey, she's paying for me.
And you don't want to waste the money.
I don't want to waste the time. She's working hard.
Sure.
I don't want to waste the money. So I chose. She didn't force me to choose. I chose that I'm going to let this thing go. I'm going to just make sure that her money doesn't go down the drain. So then I went in, studied engineering. Then once I was done, I went to work for one of the biggest engineering firms in Africa, Bosch. It was a consulting company. And worked there, and during my time at school, because I thought that I was going to fail if I did anything else, I didn't sell, I didn't do anything. I just focused on school. Then immediately I started my working my job. I quickly picked up a couple of things. First of all, no engineer here drove the car of my dreams. Like this is what I was working so hard for. Yeah. No one here was driving the car of my dreams. No one here spoke about having abundance, having the kind of life, which was what was really inspiring me. So I'm like, okay, fine, you know what I'm gonna do? Hang in there. Maybe it's white people. Maybe they're low key.
They're stingy.
Yeah, you know what I mean? So,
or they're spending money on something else.
Exactly. Yeah. So I'm like, let me just hang in there. But this is when I met you. This was back in 2015. And I was first introduced to network marketing, through a friend of mine who knew you. Came in and, he's connected me to you. And I was shown one thing. I remember I was shown how to make 18,000 rand in 1 month. And I remember, 18,000 for those who are watching is about equivalent to $1,000. And I remember if I made 18,000, that was enough. I'm going to resign from my job. I'm going to have this, So that's what was in my mind. I could make enough money part-time that will replace my full-time income. And I tried it and it didn't work. I failed, But I did not fail because I didn't know what it is. I never knew much about the industry of network marketing. I just thought, just bring this one, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And when my first 20 people didn't respond, like, let me go look at something else.
Yeah.
But guess what? From the first day of my, first month in my job, I was never just an employee. I always did something part-time. I was selling perfumes. I was selling I was in good shape back then. So I was selling supplements. I went on to start, a timber business as well. That all of those things was like sort of failing. And then my last business I can remember was, a transporting business, this mini transporting business, and then that was the time I actually met you again. We introduced me into the business, the network marketing business, where I actually now had my biggest breakthrough,
Sure.
But at that particular time, I had about 4 to 5 things going on at that particular moment in time. And I remember people would be like, no, you need to stop these things, you need to focus, and you know what I mean? But I was like, none of you guys are entrepreneurs, But so when I met you and then you said, okay, look, you need to focus on this thing, Or you had mentioned someone else who had recommended that. And you had a time and closed your real estate business, you had to close all other things.
Yeah.
So to me, I was like, let me go, So now, when I went in, I was zoned in. And obviously, about a year later, 2 years later after being zoned in, I made my first million. I was 26 at the time. And things just like, I was open up to a new world.
First million at 26. Wow.
Yeah, so I made my first million at 26. So then, but obviously, you had showed me a lot of things. Now, how I actually came to this whole thing of actually resigning was, I think at the time, you had made $1 million in 1 month. And I was like, what? And then you went out to go buy a house and go buy a car. I'm like, no, Meanwhile, my bosses who were there for 15 years, and you were in that particular business for just over about a year. And these guys were working for about 15 years, and they were complaining about not having enough, money at the end of the month. Some of them were complaining about petrol prices going up, and you were not. And the environment that you had set up at the particular moment in time, where you were teaching a lot of what we now know as the 21st century business principles, I was like, this was a different world in the same city. It's like I was in the same city experiencing 2 different worlds.
Yeah.
One world where there seemed to be everything, but there was a mindset of lack.
Sure.
Where here, there was everything that I wanted to see, but also a hunger for more, a casting of vision of how all of us could actually be living this life.
Sure.
And for me, I was excited about that. And I remember that it was the 4th of January, you had set up a training session where I was now introduced into these particular principles and actually shown the bigger spectrum of this whole industry. And I remember that particular day, you asked a couple of questions. And when I went back home, I asked those questions to myself and I took the industry serious. And in the space of 4 months, so from January to April, I had taken the business seriously. I was, you were showing me the ropes, and 4 months later, I was able to resign from my job.
Wow.
Because at that particular month, I made 3 times my salary, and I was doing this business part time. So I asked myself the question: if I could do this full time, how would my life? I would be just like him. And lo and behold, a couple of years later, life had completely changed, and. So yeah, man, that's essentially what. But I think entrepreneurship was always in me.
Sure.
But I just needed an outlet and sort of an outlet, but most importantly, confirmation of the thing that I wanted to see was actually. You know what I mean? It's like, I remember David Immuniti says that Holton Bugs was the first person he saw who embodied the life that he thought was possible. So obviously when we met you, you were the first person that I could relate to. Same color, we could relate. You're not like, I saw white people who had this and that, but you were the first one like, I can relate to this guy because I saw him not have anything and I see him now having everything that I want to have. So you became like the embodiment. I was like, so this guy. And when I saw like your background, you come from it, you were gifted in the similar areas that I was gifted in, speaking, preaching, and all of those things. I was like, so you became, this thing, it's possible, you know? And so after embodying all of those things, for me it was simple. I don't need to think anything else. I don't need to do anything else. I need to follow this guy.
Sure.
That's it. And my life after that, life had completely changed.
Interesting. So guys, just to give you a bit of, maybe just to add on the same or enlighten everybody, when you talk about a business model, talking about network marketing, I had left my real estate business, as many of you know, and I pursued network marketing. And, that really changed my life. And I think one of the things that a lot of people maybe don't understand about the journey of being an entrepreneur, I think you captured it quite well. That is, people, that there's something that's out there, and you test and try out many different vehicles, thinking that they will get you there, up until you find a vehicle where you and that vehicle, you fit like hand and glove.
Sure.
And then magic happens.
100%.
Life begins to change because it then ministers to you.
Yeah.
In a way that I say to people, people like you and I, we don't look at work as something to run away from.
Sure.
It's actually something that we run into.
Yes.
If nobody actually stops us, we will work 24 hours if it were possible, because it's something that we really enjoy and that we're having fun doing it. And the fact that we get to make money is an even greater bonus.
100%.
Because if it wasn't for that, then it wouldn't really be sustainable, because we're human beings. We've got things and people to take care of and stuff like that. So, but one of the things that people don't understand is that when you are an entrepreneur, if you look at the story of Donald Trump, you look at Sir Richard Branson, you look at most entrepreneurs who've made it big in this world, you'll find that there was a time whereby they did well, but then there was a time they didn't do so well.
Sure.
But then what separates them from the rest of the people who actually did well at some point is the fact that there's something in them that never gives up. They're always rising, and when they rise, they always rise to the occasion. They become bigger. They become more successful. They do bigger things, in a greater way. So what are some of the lessons, maybe one or two lessons that you've learned, in the year 2022, and maybe even take us into the year 2023 and beyond, I know you and I off the camera, we talk a lot about, about the stuff that we're doing and plan to do. I want you to introduce us to the Get Rich, a movement,
Sure.
right? So I'm excited to hear about that, to talk about that. But just before we get into that, tell us some of the lessons that you've learned in the year 2022.
Awesome. I think one of the things that as you said, when you listen to Sir Richard Branson, Donald Trump, he was bankrupt 5 times. Any success story, there's a point where after making my first million, 26, at 27, I made my first million a month. Right? Then obviously, things went down, things went bad, and all of those things. And, it's how the normal cycle of how entrepreneurship would go.
Sure.
I heard of people who made money, and I'm like, I was never gonna be one of those people. But and I was like, when it happened, I'm like, it's so funny because I thought this would never happen to me.
Sure.
But one thing I picked up during that whole season was that even though my money had gone down, but my expectations never dropped.
Yeah. And that's power.
And I think there's a huge temptation of when things go down, you want to go down. But my biggest lesson was in everything sort of going south was never to contract. And there's a huge because now when things went down, I had my wife, I had family that was taken care of and stuff like that, family members. During the COVID period, I was the savior in my family. If you know what I mean, it's like
Sure.
my mom's family, some of my dad's family. I was, because people had lost jobs and what, I was like making a lot of money, so I was giving people stuff. You know what I mean? So my family, a lot of my family members during that period of time was dependent on me, you know, and so I saw my income going down. You know, I tried to do certain things. I normally, but I don't want to lie, when things were going down, that's where I was being built and not my business. Sometimes there's a season where you're being built and a season where things are being built, you know. And so even though things were going down, I don't want to lie, there was a huge temptation to start thinking smaller, and thanks again to people like you, because obviously you and again, you know, when I the whole Get Rich Activist brand comes from that, is, you know, it's 4 particular elements of my life that I focused on to give me the life of my desire. It was environment, it was vehicle, it was mentorship, and it was personal development. But the most important thing was environment, was that even though when things are going down, make sure that you're constantly in an environment that speaks to your future, not your current circumstances.
Sure.
And so, I mean, right now, I'm right now in a place that you used to visit, used to be the environment of your dreams, and we're currently here right now. And we used to come here every single time, you know. We used to speak about what we need to do, how to expand, how to have more, how to go out there and not to get back to the place where we used to be,
Sure.
but to have more than we ever have had. And that's, you know, what is sort of knocking in me. And so instead of contracting, downsizing, moving to a smaller place, you know, having a smaller, you know what I mean? Even though everything was gone down, through God's grace, nothing was lost. You know? And I mean, even right now, we're going bigger. We're thinking much more bigger. And so this is when, I remember this was back in 2019, you and I were driving work, actually in Joburg, and we were doing a video, and we were talking, and I was like, you know, I'm right now a Get Rich Activist.
Sure.
And I was thinking about that because this is the same time where, you know, there was this whole wokeness campaign going around. There were all sorts of activists. There were this activist, this social activist, this, you know what I mean?
Sure.
And I was not against that, but at that particular moment in time, the one thing that was, and I mean, that was another phase in my time where things were not going well for me. You know, even though I had resigned from my job, I had made money, I was also going through a phase where I was not making money. This is now late 2019.
Sure.
You know, just after I made my first million, just after I bought my first, you know, my dream car at the time, you know, things went south, you know?
Sure.
So, as things were going, you know, down, we were traveling to Joburg, we're about to do a seminar here. I remember myself saying, I'm a Get Rich Activist. I want people to embrace this, the mindset of becoming rich, and not just financially.
Sure.
And that's the biggest mistake people think. The word rich, it's the word rich in itself is a word that describes something.
Sure.
It's not just a word in its own. The word rich means abundance. It means plentiful. And we as human beings are to have a plentiful life experience.
Sure.
You know, we are spirits living in a body.
Sure.
And spirits are for expansion. They are for multiplication. This is why human beings can never become satisfied as long as they are on this planet.
Sure.
Because our life is towards becoming rich, and there's a gap. You know, it's not just about having a lot of money. And so this is why the whole Get Rich Activist brand and movement is about having money. You know, because money answers all things. Yeah. 99% of all prayers that people have can be answered by having money. Sure. Okay? But then obviously there's the whole the whole pursuit of having a meaningful life. Sure. And you'll understand that having a meaningful life is actually having a rich life. A life that is full of meaning. Yeah. Full of purpose. You know, you spoke about income, the 2 kinds of income. Earned income, that is, you know, but then you also have psychic income that speaks to purpose and meaning, and you not just having money, but having an experience in life that adds value to other people.
Sure.
Because a lot of money is what you have earned.
Yeah.
But a lot of meaning is what you have allowed other people to earn through your gift.
Sure.
You know?
That's power.
You know? So for me in particular, I realized, okay, fine. So this whole get rich activist is, why don't all of us, why don't I drive a movement that inspires people to chase this gap, this income, this potential gap that exists between where they are and where they want to be.
Sure.
And when are you person who wants to make more money? When are you a person who wants to, have a better life? You want to have, we have this whole thing of mental health right now.
Yeah.
And so for me, being a get rich activist was about driving that movement of having more, becoming more, expanding into places and spaces of more effectiveness.
Sure.
And so the Get Rich podcast, the Get Rich brand is about the podcast. There's courses, there's books, it's an ecosystem. It's a whole world that inspires people to become more than what they are currently right now.
Wow, guys, that's plentiful. That's plentiful right there. Now, I think there's a lot of, in what you're saying, there's a lot of people misunderstand, what the pursuit of money actually does to a person. Now, so if I say I want to earn, let's say I was earning 5,000 Rand a month, 10,000 Rand a month, but then I'm like, no man, I think I believe I can earn 500,000 Rand a month and so forth. Now, the gap between where I am financially and the gap where I want to be, it's not just an amount of money that comes in that fills that gap. It's actually the person that I have to grow into for me to be able to be that person. So you'll find that the reason why people are able to bounce back even after failure, after misfortune, people who have actually worked for it, not people who have won the lottery or something like that or inherited money. It's because in them pursuing, their kind of lifestyle, that kind of income, their goals, their dreams, whatever they're ambitious about, they become a better person. They become stronger because, it doesn't happen any other way, right? You have to go through this metamorphosis, multiple times, of growing and developing up until you get to that person. And once you get there, you find that that's actually more valuable than the money. It's more valuable.
100%.
For example, now you're talking about you earning your first million a month, right? That whole experience that got you there is more valuable than the million itself.
You're right.
That is why, even though you've made a million then, you're not even scared or worried about, can I ever make a million? You actually think about, how can I make 2, 3, 4, 5 million?
Yes.
Because of the person that you've become in the process.
100%.
Right. So with the get rich activist, I like the fact that you are going to take like an all-rounded approach in the sense that you help people understand that you pursuing financial riches actually enriches your life in all these other areas as well.
Yes.
So I'm quite excited to see that, to see that unfold.
Yes.
And I think the world, South Africa is basically ready for something like that. And I like the fact that there's a lot of realness. I mean, we live in this world today of Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. There's a lot of fugazi out there. Sure. But the value of us sharing our personal stories and our experiences actually gives other people permission as well.
Of course.
Because sometimes when a person looks at a Neo out there, listening to Neo, talking so eloquently, being able to express himself, people think, he's too gifted, I might never ever get there because I don't have that gift, my vocab is not as advanced as he is, whatever the case. So, but then when we talk about the experiences, that's what people relate to. And inspires people. It gets people to want to strive as well, for more, right?
Sure.
And yeah. So what can people look forward to with the Get Rich movement in the near future?
There was one thing that we were asking me about 2022. One of the lessons is in 2022 I did not go big enough, and so this whole thing of Get Rich activists is not just me wanting to give back. It's me going on a journey, and I'm taking people with.
Sure.
This journey of where I am right now and where I'm about to be, and the principles that I'm applying will be shared on this. And so it's not, a lot of people may speak in a in a teacher-student kind of a thing.
Sure.
And for me, this is not about it being me being a teacher and the views becoming a student, but it's about us moving towards an experience together.
Sure.
This is a journey from where I am right now to where I'm about to be, which is 10x of where I am right now.
Sure.
We're not chasing $1 million a month anymore. We want to impact millions of lives a month now. You know what I mean? So that's different. And obviously chasing billions with to that. My next stop is to become is to make my first billion at the age of 35. That's literally 6 years from now.
Sure.
So it could happen much more sooner. As I go, and that's something, we were having a conversation yesterday, and you're saying you may know what you want from here to here, but you know that you might not know how you're going to get there. But what you do know is that the one step is going to introduce you to a different world that you did not even think of.
Sure.
There's a lot of things that you got on the journey towards with being where you are,
Sure.
And that's what I relate so much to, that because the stuff that we're doing right now, take business, in this and that, you never really know what you are open to when you take that first step.
True.
And so the whole thing of the Get Rich activist movement is really about helping people to take that next step. It's like you driving in the dark and I don't know in other places, but in South Africa, you can only see 45 minutes 45 meters in front of a vehicle. You can only see the next 45 meters when you've driven the next 45 meters.
Sure.
In terms of your spotlight. So that's exactly what we're trying to do. So this year, this year, and the reason why I'm thinking about next year right now is because we've never stopped working.
Sure.
We've never stopped. December to us was while other people are relaxing, we were just working. So we never really don't care what the year is. But what we're doing in the first quarter of 2023. So first of all, we're going to be having our first online experience, the Get Rich Activist Summit. Okay.
Sure.
And then that will be obviously preceded by the Get Rich Activist book that will be coming out towards the end of January.
Sure.
But it's going to be an ebook, so it's going to be downloadable for people to see and go and read about it, the concept, the things that people can start applying today to go out there and have their first breakthrough financially.
Sure.
So the principles that we're going to be laying out there will be showing people how to live a more fulfilled life, but most importantly, how to make mullah. And that's the first thing. That's what people want. People want to make money, especially right now, the times that we're in. So the Get Rich Activist ebook will be out, where people will be getting, they'll be getting concepts, principles on what to apply that I've applied to go on and make my first million and even first million a month.
Sure.
So that's going to be shared there. We're going to be having merch as well, the Get Rich Activist merch.
Sure.
And many people ask me, why merch? You know what I mean? And I was saying this, listen, Louis Vuitton, Gucci is not just clothing; it's an experience.
It's true.
You feel different, and you know this when you wear the Gucci.
100%.
When you have the Louis Vuitton cologne, when you have it's not just about the clothes, not just about, you know what I mean. This is why we're not interested in just wearing Gucci for Gucci's sake.
Yeah.
You can go get Gucci at the Chinese mall, whatever the case may be. But when you wear the original, you know that you have the name. There's a level of, there's something about that, inspired much by Grant Cardone with the 10x movement. There's something about the 10x movement. More than just the word 10x, it's the experience attached to it.
Yeah.
And so with the apparel as well, when you wear the apparel, there's the element of being rich that should come out, that should be invoked within you. When you see that the 10x, the Get Rich Activist brand, that will be all over the world, there's something about you doing more that should be invoked. You impacting more people's lives that should be invoked. You acting on all the dreams and ideas that you have that should be invoked when you see that particular element. And just knowing that what you're doing right now is not enough for the person that you need to be tomorrow.
Sure.
So I'm not sure if it was you, but you're saying that, whatever you did in the past was enough for all the things you've achieved in the past, but not enough for the things you're going to need to do in the future. And so that whole particular gap, that bridge, is the Get Rich Activist.
Awesome. Yeah, guys, listening to this, I'm like, where do I sign up, I want to be part of this movement, right? It sounds really, really exciting, and I really relate to it, because of, it really appeals to, to who I am and the stuff that we've done and stuff that we want to do. So that's really exciting. So guys, there you have it from Mr. Cheka himself, the Get Rich activist. Now, what we're gonna do, ladies and gents, we're gonna keep this guy accountable, right? In the next 2 or 3 months, we're gonna call him again on this podcast, and we're gonna talk about the fact that where are we with the Get Rich activist? How can people partner with him? As he said, he wants to take you on a journey, right? So we're gonna keep him accountable, and that's one of the things that we really spoke about. That in this year and beyond, really keeping each other accountable, making sure that there's plenty of people. I'm talking about millions of people out there who basically need the kind of messaging that he has, right? So we shouldn't and will not allow anything to hinder that. So quite excited about that. So if you are watching us from YouTube, please make sure that you click on the subscribe button. Click on the notification bell so that you get notified of all the other videos that we're going to do. We are, as he said, he's a sucker for success. I'm a sucker for success as well. I remember at some point we wanted to call this, the Success Factory podcast.
Yes.
And because of the fact that we really want to, talk to people who have succeeded in something, who are succeeding in something, who will succeed in something, right? That's a whole, story right there. We can talk, for days about that. What is success and what it means. So, if you want to hear more of, stories like Mr. Cheka right here, make sure that you follow us even on social media. And with that being said, I want to thank you, everyone. If you found value, see you on the next podcast. Cheers.
Cheers.